Welcome back. The Bank of England has announced that interest rates will remain at 5.25%, but claims that prospects for a cut are moving in the right direction. This has got everyone asking, what will it take for those cuts to be made? Meanwhile, the cost of living crisis remains a stark reality, with inflation failing to meet the Bank of England's 2% target, and Britain's favourite products are said to be suffering from shrinkflation. Easter eggs are said to be the latest victims of this, with Brits paying higher prices for smaller-sized eggs. Joining us live is Jonathan Davis, economist, wealth advisor and writer of the Free Booms and Busts reports. Hi, Jonathan. Good to have you on the programme. Nice to see you. Tell me about the Bank of England and interest rates and really what this translates to in terms of real people and what's in their pockets and what's not.
The Bank of England today decided again not to reduce interest rates, base rates, as many commentators had hoped that they would be doing. Essentially, the Bank of England is following the Federal Reserve in the United States by not cutting rates. And indeed, it looks as if rates will not fall for at least a few months. And people with mortgages, with debts paying interest, they shouldn't expect many interest rate cuts at all this year, perhaps one or two. Because quite simply, the cost of living has stopped. The rate of increase in inflation has stopped falling. Inflation is starting to tick up again. On the other side, people should bear in mind that global growth has started to tick up again. So on the one hand, it's bad for the cost of living, but on the other hand, it might mean possibly more jobs coming.
So it's quite difficult to know, isn't it, what advice people should follow or what advice to offer people? Because obviously, you know, everybody is still embroiled and embattled in this cost of living crisis. And although we may hear and do hear quite a lot from Rishi Sunak and the government about inflation falling, or at least inflation not increasing, which isn't at all the same thing, but is always represented as if it is, nobody seems to feel as if they've got any more money, do they?
Inflation is increasing. What the politicians were talking about was that the rate of inflation was falling, as I just said, for over a year, but they were pretending that the cost of living was actually falling. No, it was just the rate of increase in prices that was falling. Well, unfortunately, what we now have, the rate of increase in prices is rising again. And that's why mortgage costs, personal loan rates, the base rate is not falling again. So people should continue, I'm afraid to say, to have to tighten their belts. You know, last year and this year, over 2 million households saw their mortgage rates rise because their fixed rate mortgages ended. And that, as I say, goes on to the end of this year. That's over 2 million homes. 1.5 million homes are going to see their mortgage costs, their monthly costs, rise between 25 and 50%. So things are tight, and people should expect them to be tight for at least the next couple of years.
And those people who will consider themselves to be casualties of that very fleeting Liz Truss administration and that particular Kwasi-Kwarteng budget, and those are the people with the mortgages that aren't fixed and everything else. What awaits those people? Because they're quite a significant segment of the population, aren't they?
I'm so sorry, Vanessa. What is it that you think that Liz Truss and Kwarteng did?
Well, we think that people's mortgages were sort of doomed to increase in a dramatic and swingeing manner. Do you not agree?
Right. Mortgages did rise, but not because of Truss and Kwasi. Global inflation soared in 2021 and 22. So therefore, interest rates soared from the beginning of 2022. It was nothing to do with the UK Prime Minister. I mean, that's a fallacy, and I'm sorry, the media has been pushing for the last year and a half. The fact is, since the second half of 2022, inflation was falling until the end of last year. And what I'm saying is global growth and inflation have stopped falling. They've started to tick up. And that's why we cannot expect the big falls in interest rates that many people were suggesting we would be getting. And because inflation is likely to be here well into next year, that's why, as I say, we should expect interest rates, mortgage rates, maybe to fall a bit, but not to fall much. And I'm sorry, it's nothing to do with Liz Truss.
Right. We know that there's an election imminent. We think it's probably now going to be at the latter end of this year. Does that have an effect on the economy and have an effect on interest rates, the kind of volatility, the uncertainty and the possibility of a Labour government when Labour's traditionally been branded not the party of business, or you might say of prosperity?
General elections do normally bring about slight dips in an economy. And indeed, you're asking about the people, the normal person. Expect house prices to continue falling, and particularly in the 3 months up to the election. They've been falling through 2023 and they will fall through 2024, largely because of the massive rise in interest rates. Bearing in mind that actually the UK general election, funnily enough, is less important to our economy than the US presidential election, which is going to happen in November. We know that for a fact. And again, yes, that will create some uncertainty. I will say to you, post both of those elections, I would expect the politicians to open the spigots, spend, after, of course, borrowing. And that will, in the short term, help the economy in 2025. The problem is that will exacerbate inflation. And the only people who will pay for that are the bottom 90%. Because remember, Vanessa, and this is a thing that no one ever talks about, inflation is the biggest tax of all. And that is what we have, and it's going to be even bigger in 2025.
Jonathan, thank you very much indeed. Coming up after the break, concerns about mental health have gone too far. That's according to Work and Pensions Secretary Mel Stride, as he tries to get people back to work. I'm Vanessa Feltz. You're with Talk on TV, radio, online and on your smart speaker.